There's an increasing amount of people who are fed up with their phones and social media. And these people are switching their smartphones for what's being called a dumb phone. A lot of people are giving the dumb phone thing a try, and social media has a ton of videos. And when I say a ton, I mean thousands of videos of people doing an experiment or trying out a dumb phone. And there are tons of videos of people documenting the process, what it's like to switch phones, and some people are making it permanent. If you haven't heard this term before, a dumb phone is essentially a low tech phone. If you lived through the 2000s, think about this as your traditional flip phone. These phones typically, but not always, have no internet connection, no apps. And if they do have Wi Fi, it's a browser opposed to being able to install apps on your phone. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're a millennial or a Gen X or somebody who lived through the 2000s and you accidentally logged onto the browser and you kind of panicked a little bit because you thought you were going to be charged $1 million. These phones don't have a QWERTY keyboard and have T9 texting. And so these dumb phones are appless. And if you want to connect to things like Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok, you have to do it through the internet, which is slow and kind of clumsy and clunky, and you also have a smaller screen, and it's not a really enjoyable experience. T9 texting as well really slows down your typing, and so you can't type as much as fast. Now, some of the modern dumb phones that people are switching to aren't entirely that, and we'll talk about that later. In today's video, we're going to talk about the dumb phone. Why are people switching? Why is there so much interest in these dumb phones? We'll talk about what people are learning when they switch, about things like the effects of social media, phone addiction, or how people spend time. We'll also talk about whether dumb phones are a realistic or practical solution to some of these problems. And then we'll also talk about what this might say about consumer culture, because this whole dumb phone thing may sound really great in practice, maybe to some, but I can tell you it's not all upside. Let's get started and let's first talk about why people are switching to dumb phones. The overwhelming answer is to lower screen time. In some of these videos, people are sharing their screen time with people saying they spend 6, 7, or 8 hours on their phone a day. Some people spend almost the same amount of time that they are sleeping on their phone. A lot of people feel like they're chained to their phone or addicted to their phone. Many people as well feel like social media has negatively impacted their mental health, as well as their attention span, their overall happiness. So let's look at a few examples of people talking about why they're interested in the dumb phone or why they're trying it out or switching.
I have absolutely changed my life in a very short period of time buying one of these old style Nokia flip phones. Oh my goodness. So I bought one of these in an effort to reduce my screen time. I was averaging 6 hours and 34 minutes a day. I was like, Jesus Christ. And then I saw a reel that said if you spend 3 hours or more on social media or whatever, by the time you get to 80, that's 10 consecutive years of your life that you've thrown in the drain. And I was literally just like, oh my god, like I do double that. And I was like, I need to take my life back, this is crazy. Pre 2020 I was rarely on my phone. Like you couldn't even get me on my phone because I was never on it. And 2020 happened, my business went online, and as a result, I found myself being online so much. Now, I would often go on Instagram with the intention to do something for work, and then I'd find myself doom scrolling, and then I'm like taking in a million pieces of information in a very short period of time. I become very overwhelmed, overstimulated, and I totally crash out and just have to get off the phone altogether. So I found myself that I wasn't even very productive. So I bought one of these phones, didn't have much hope because I was kind of thinking my whole life is on my smartphone. How am I going to live without it? How am I going to function without it? But then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go anyway. So my SIM card is in here. People call and text me on this phone during the day, and then on this phone it's connected to Wi-Fi only. So I check it in the morning just to make sure I have no work related emergencies coming through, and then I check it in the evening time for personal use. And what I have found is that I have reduced my screen time to under 3 hours, and that's like reducing every single day. And all those WhatsApps that I tend to like message, like, you know, the sporadic messages you get and then you reply, you know, boom, 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 to everyone. Instead, now they compound, and at the end of the day, I basically message everyone back on WhatsApp in one go. So the last couple of nights, it's literally taken me 10 minutes to WhatsApp everyone. So I'm still connected to people, to my friends and all that kind of stuff. And if people really need to get me, like if it's an emergency, they call me, and I can get them on this phone.
So in this video, she talks about her experience using a dumb phone and why she went on it. She also talks about some of the impacts. I cut it off a little bit short because we're going to talk about what people are learning and the impacts a little bit later on, but you get to hear some of what she's saying. What I think is really interesting about this is that what she's done is use the phone to create a different habit that is also possible on the smartphone. So what I mean by that is she could check her emails or her text messages in the morning, leave her phone in, I don't know, a drawer or a place, and then check it again in the evening and do that 10 or 15-minute check-in for the texts or the messages of the day. That is totally possible on a smartphone. But what I think you'll find as we continue watching these videos, and what we'll talk about a little later on as well, is that people can have those habits on the smartphone, but the smartphone is just providing too many temptations for that to feel like a realistic solution for some folks. What I really feel like was the aha moment for her was realizing just how much time she feels like she's wasting. So the figure she used was if you spend 3 hours on your smartphone a day, if you make it to 80, that's 10 consecutive years on your smartphone. So I feel like her brain went to, well, I'm doing 6.5 on average, then that's 20 years. I don't know how true that is. I don't know exactly how old she is, but let's say you're in your 30s. People's smartphone usage hasn't always been like this. And that is an appeal of the dumb phone. But whether it's true or not, it was enough to move her and to really consider, is this how I want to be spending my time? Let's watch another one. This one is actually a report from the CBC.
Hello. She spent about $80 on a flip phone. It allows talk and text, but no social media. Known as dumb phones, simple phones, or even boring phones, these basic models seem to be making a comeback. Sales in Canada grew by 25% in 2023 compared to the year before.
The smartphone is not a source of enjoyment anymore. It used to be fun, but now they're addicted to it, so they want to go back to simpler times using a simpler device.
When Lee Tynan agreed to get her 13-year-old daughter a cell phone, she didn't want it to become a distraction.
When there's a smartphone or a screen, you don't practice guitar, you don't read a book, you don't just be bored.
The company that makes Nokia phones has relaunched a model from 20 years ago. The Lite phone is also trying to cash in on the demand. Its version has a more modern design, a black and white screen, and no connection to the internet. The company is in talks with TELUS and hopes to bring the phone to Canada later this year.
Right now I'm using the F22. I just felt a lot calmer and a lot happier, and I just get to like live my life in the place where I am at that moment rather than constantly being mentally like elsewhere.
Let's watch a little bit more, and then we can talk about them collectively.
No one jumped me, but it is that damn phone. I have to clock it to you really quickly. Not having the ability to sit down and watch a TV show or a movie or read a damn book, okay? I'm calling myself out here, okay? I'm in the same boat with you guys, okay? I will drag myself too here. Not having that ability to do those things without picking up your phone once to check on social media, especially on TikTok, because I feel like TikTok has really exacerbated this issue. It's not normal, okay? We have to be so for real, okay? Our attention spans are fried as fuck, and I'm talking deep fried Kentucky Fried Chicken. And it's the truth. Not being able to watch a movie because shit isn't popping off within like the first 20 minutes, that's not normal. Not being able to sit down and read a book without feeling like you need to pick up your phone and scroll for hours. Like I said, I'm calling myself out here. That's not normal, Nadia. And that's not normal for you too, because you do it too. And guess what? You're probably watching this video in 2x speed because I'm not talking fast enough.
Okay, one more.
I needed to make a change, and I did. I went the nuclear route, and I got a dumb phone, and let me tell you, it has been incredible. I would recommend it to anyone if you're feeling down, if you're feeling depressed, if you spend the day rotting in your bed. Mine was bad, man. I was spending 7+ hours on my screen every day. I was just not feeling good. I got so used to that constant stream of stimulation. I couldn't sit for 20 minutes and read a book without checking my phone. And then when I did, I would inevitably have a notification and I'd check that, and then I'd spend the next 2 hours doing God knows what on my phone. And I'm so sick of my attention being monopolized by these companies that make gobs of money from my diverted attention. It's ridiculous. I'm sick of it. I'm opting out. I don't want anything to do with it. So I'm on this. It's been about 2 months. Getting used to texting has been hard. I've had to get used to this like alphanumeric keyboard. It's been hard to stand in line and to be bored, but it's also been so good. I think we need to be bored. I think being bored is important. Anyway, it's been really good. Shout out Punked for sending this to me.
What we're seeing in these videos are similar sentiments, right? We have the attention is the problem. We can't sit still. We can't do tasks in our lives without constantly checking our phones. That was number one. Boredom was expressed multiple times as well. One of the examples, like in the CBC video, was the parent who was talking about how the phone is the distraction. The parent wasn't necessarily saying that the child doesn't have the attention span anymore. They were saying that when you have the phone, when you have the source of entertainment and the thing that you go to when you're bored, you don't do the other things. And she didn't want the phone to be a distraction for the child. We also hear how it seems to have positively impacted people's mental health, feeling lighter, feeling less depressed or less anxious, which we'll see a little bit more as well throughout. The irony of the last video, though, this guy saying that, oh, all these companies are grabbing our attention and like making money off of us. It's not a sponsorship, but they gave him the phone. It's PR. It's still an advertisement for the phone. How people interact with their phones is seemingly the problem, and then the side effects of those interactions, right? Like if you go onto your phone to check your WhatsApp or to check your DMs, and then you just kind of keep going 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later. And when we hear all of these examples, what I think people are getting at is yes, the habits and how we interact with their phones, but it's social media being the problem. And people are saying it's the phone because it's the phone that provides the access to the social media. People aren't saying that they're spending hours texting other people or hours on WhatsApp. They're saying that they're spending hours scrolling and being on the social. Dumb phones aren't the only option for this, though. Like, if you want to not have access to social media, there's this thing called the brick, which I'll play a clip of, that basically locks out your phone. You can also set timers or kind of lockouts on your phone, depending on the model that you have. When I was looking at examples online, just so many like iPhone examples. Even if you search like a general, like how to turn your smartphone into a dumb phone or things like that, so much Apple. But there are also modes on your smartphone that you can change to in order to kind of get some of the effects of the smartphone, or sorry, the dumb phone. You can also delete the apps, of course. And there are people recommending this. And if you are somebody who is struggling with the impacts of social media, whether it's on your mental health, your screen time, or other factors, and you're looking for a solution, I would check one of these first before just running out and going to grab a phone.
Okay, I truly think this is one of the best purchases I've made to date, so I felt the need to share. For some context, a couple years back, I read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. In that book, it's basically about slowing down and like taking control back of your life. Technology and like phone addiction has taken away, and social media and all that stuff. There's a concept about making your smartphone into a dumb phone, and only having the basic functions so that you're not distracted constantly by social media and like the noise of the 20th century. On this thing, it's called the brick. You tap your phone to it, it bricks your phone, and it takes off all of your apps that you like give it access to. You can put it on your fridge, desk, front door, wherever, any magnetic surface. It says what to do all bricked, read, explore, focus, hang out. And then it will become unbricked when you tap it again. My goal is whenever I'm leaving the house, go do homework or hang out with friends, I'm gonna brick my phone so that I cannot be distracted by any sort of social media, and then unbrick it when I get home. And that will be my time to like be on my phone and relax.
What strikes me though with a lot of people is that these options aren't enough. And that's largely because they rely on self control. You have to set up the brick, or some of these iPhone modes specifically, if you tap a button 3 times or whatever, it will revert back very quickly. So, or if you delete the apps, what people find is within a few days, weeks, or even months, you're back to the same setup. Those options rely on self-control, which can be a depleting resource. When you have the physical change of the dumb phone, you're taking willpower and self-control completely out of the equation. Maybe not completely, but you're not relying on it to make your choices. According to Stanford psychologist Anna Lemke, we're wired to connect. It's kept us alive for millions of years in a world of scarcity and ever-present danger. Our brains release dopamine when we make human connections, which incentivizes us to do it again. But social connection has become drugified by social media apps, making us vulnerable to compulsive overconsumption. These apps can cause the release of large amounts of dopamine into our brain's reward path all at once, just like heroin or meth or alcohol. They do that by amplifying the feel good properties that attract humans to each other in the first place. Then there's the novelty. Dopamine is triggered by your brain's search and explore function, telling us, hey, pay attention to this, something new has come along. And to that artificial intelligence algorithms that learn what we've liked before and suggest new things that are similar but not exactly the same, and we're off and running. What they're getting at here is the constant stream of novelty. Upon signing off, the brain is plunged into a dopamine deficit state as it attempts to adapt to the unnaturally high levels of dopamine social media just released, which is why social media often feels good while we're doing it, but horrible as soon as we stop. Yes, a timeout, at least for a day, it can be an antidote. That's the question. But a whole month is more typically the minimum amount of time we need away from our drug of choice, whether it's heroin or Instagram, to reset our dopamine reward pathways. A month-long dopamine fast will decrease the anxiety and depression that social media can induce and enhance our ability to enjoy other, more modest rewards again. This may explain why people have a hard time with the self-control component. Imagine just telling a drug addict to just like not touch it. Is social media equivalent to drugs? I'm not professional. I'm not here to say that. But if social media is drugified and we're really operating on these intense pleasure when we're using it, if you're somebody who's on it a lot, this is maybe something that you can attest to. Dopamine is like pleasure, right? You have the high, but that also requires the low, and why people continue to go on and it feels so good. So the dumb phone is essentially a way of getting the dopamine fast, as she has described. And so what people may be describing in these earlier videos is this addiction. People might be calling it phone addiction, but I feel like it's perhaps more the social media addiction and the yo-yo effects of dopamine and pleasure. I don't want to get too hung up on like what we're calling it because I feel like we all are on the same page of what's happening. If you want to read more about this author does have a book called Dopamine Nation. I requested it at my library. I was intrigued by her in this video and the impacts of social media and dopamine uh, on how we operate in the world. It's kind of similar to shopping. I should say that shopping is also a dopamine powerhouse, just like social media. Why people go to shopping and it feels good and pleasure, and then when you're not doing it, uh, I've had experiences with that. So I was personally intrigued. It's also a way to start, you're not always up here riding the high of the dopamine. You, I guess, in essence, have none of it, which maybe resets your levels. And then you can experience more normal levels of dopamine or activities and perhaps even enjoy them more. Let's now watch a couple of videos of people who are talking about what they've learned from their experiments. These are people who have completed their experiment or have been using the phone for a long period of time.
I used a flip phone for a week, and here's how it went. This is week 2 in my new mental health series where I try out every single thing that's recommended to boost your mental health. And guys, this week was crazy. Monday morning, I put my phone away expecting to have the most productive day ever. But within the first couple of hours, I felt completely isolated. And I got really anxious. So you already know I had to work out. The day ended up being okay, but going to bed without doing the New York Times Mini was actually brutal. Tuesday was productive, but leaving the house with a flip phone made me feel kind of naked. I also experienced actual boredom for the first time in a while. All I could really do was take really low quality selfies. Wednesday I had a dentist appointment and it was off. Being in a waiting room without a phone is wild. 5 minutes actually feels like 5 years. Also, I wanted to Shazam a song, but I couldn't, so I just videoed it for later. Thursday, I went grocery shopping and humiliated myself by bringing a physical list with me. And I actually felt so off, but what can I say? It builds character. By Friday, everything was a lot easier. I was super productive and I never really felt the urge to grab my phone because I had gotten so used to my notifications always looking like this. And Saturday was obviously the easiest because I unplugged for 25 hours every week because I'm an Orthodox Jew. But overall, throughout the week, I barely had the urge to check my phone, which was pretty cool. So, did a phone detox help with my mental health? Yes. First of all, the FOMO thing went away very quickly because people would just tell me the things that I needed to know, like TikTok being banned, even though that didn't even happen. Not only that, but I felt way more inclined to spend more time on mindless things, like making dinner. It didn't feel like a tedious task anymore, and I wouldn't dread doing the dishes like I usually would. But by far, the most eye-opening part of this entire experience was actually seeing how addicted everyone is to their phone. It's one thing to say like, oh, we have a problem, we're always on our phones, but it's another to actually step outside that world and see firsthand just how bad it is. Every single person I interacted with was either holding their phone, on their phone, or looking for their phone. And it was honestly kind of scary. We've all become accustomed to having our phones be an extension of ourselves, but calling it a phone doesn't make it any less of a drug.
All right, we're going to talk about some of this we're going to talk about later, but what I want to talk about for now is the boredom. This is a common outcome people discuss when they've lived with their phone for a while, that they are experiencing boredom. And I also think that if you're somebody who maybe goes out a lot, or you're commuting to work or you take transit or things like that, not just transit, but the waiting room scenario. Great example. A lot of people go to their phones for a source of comfort and in some cases to cope with like stress or boredom. But at the same time, as I think the mom was saying earlier, is that like we'll reach for the phone instead of maybe doing something else. And what she noticed is that when you can't touch the phone, now when your phone is no longer your source of entertainment and boredom, you're now the world in a way opens up. Before, maybe cooking dinner, if you're not somebody who likes to cook, is just something that you breeze through. But when you have more time, because you don't have the more pleasurable, entertaining thing to do, you may enjoy doing the other things more, or you may be more interested or willing to spend time on tasks that you wouldn't ordinarily. All right, let's watch another experiment. This one is from Australia.
My smartphone for a $60 dumb phone for a full week, and afterwards I almost didn't want to switch back. This phone had no apps, no entertainment, and quite possibly the worst camera you'll ever see. I just put my headphones in and realised I have no access to music. What do? Listen to my own thoughts? 2 days into having this dumb phone, where the biggest dopamine rush I was going to get was looking at a world clock, it forced me to realise just how addicted to the doom scroll I was and how much I'd justify it to myself. Waiting for a coffee, the elevator, which meant now that most of my time was occupied with silence. My own thoughts. And they were pretty dull. Well, I guess it's time to try that thing everyone calls reading. The thing that's taking up most of my time is texting people.
Laugh out loud.
And I figured since I was already pretending it was 2002, I may as well commit hard to the bit and catch a bus without maps. And that was the moment I realised maybe smartphones aren't so bad. Buses were never on time. I am once again waiting for the bus. They were unreliable. They were the equivalent of that dude you went on a date with in 2022. And after 3 days I thought, maybe I'm taking this too far. Prior to the burner phone, my screen time averaged around 6 to 8 hours a day. I know. It wasn't until the 5th day that I felt the most productive. Tasks I'd been putting off for months, I did in about 15 minutes. As I sat there, looking into the abyss, I wondered, what was I running from? Aside from Sydney buses and texting like a dad, this experiment worked. Damn it, I felt clearer, calmer, and less distracted. My smooth brain was developing more wrinkles by the day, and it was about that time that I developed a superiority complex and told all my friends that they should delete their social media too.
I honestly don't know that a week is enough time to like really see what it's like to live with the dumb phone. Because this particular creator, yeah, like she did use the bus and she also encountered the walking to work or no music kind of situation. We'll talk about these things later. But what's it actually like to live with it and the impacts? I kind of feel like you need a little bit more time. 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe a couple months even. What we've seen so far is that it takes a little bit of adjusting to the phone to get used to not having all of life's conveniences on your phone. And then after that becomes the okay, you're acclimatized to it. Now what? These dumb phones are inconvenient because they don't have banking, they don't have apps, they don't have Spotify or YouTube or Instagram, obviously. Did I say banking? Because they don't have banking. They don't have Goodreads or food ordering apps. They don't have your Run Club app. You know, they are inconvenient. And 1 week is not really enough time, in my experience, or not experience, in my opinion, um, to fully understand the inconvenience of the dumb phone and the workarounds required. And whether, if you are to buy it, this might be a realistic purchase for you. We're going to watch another video. This one is from another person who did the dumb phone experiment. This will be our last example.
So I switched from a smartphone to a dumb phone, but did downgrading to a Nokia improve my life in any way? Well, at first, not really. So at this point, you're probably like, Hannah, why are you even continuing to use this phone if it's such an inconvenience? Well, that's because as I was using this phone, I was gradually learning something, which was how to truly be present. That sounds like I've never been able to be present before. I have. It's just that, like, when I have my smartphone, I just can't control myself. But anyway, the more that I use this Nokia, I stopped feeling this need to be constantly distracted. Whether I was waiting in a queue or waiting for the bus, I was able to actually wait. I was reminded to just be, to truly be with my thoughts and my surroundings. And to my surprise, it was quite peaceful, because I don't often like being with my thoughts. I became more observant of my surroundings and just started to notice the beauty of everyday life. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed by constantly scrolling, maybe you should consider switching to a dumb phone for a little bit. You might be surprised by how it impacts your life, and you might actually be surprised that you can be alone with your thoughts.
She's the second person out to talk about being alone with their thoughts. I think some people may be a bit scared of that and are constantly looking for distractions. Her phone, though, did have access to maps and YouTube. I think through the internet, though, and she was saying they weren't great. She was less distracted and she was more present, which is really wonderful. Phones are distractions. And if you think about this for a second, there are so many people out there. I think more so in the global north, people are constantly distracted by their phones and social media. That makes people constantly requiring entertainment or looking for entertainment, constantly distracted, constantly checking out from life. Imagine if you had thousands, if not millions of people rechecked in with life right now. Our smartphones have de-skilled us in a way. Things like being able to read a map and navigate through your city or your town has become less common because it's no longer required. But also, there are things like the over reliance on Google and arguably now AI, when you don't just get to Google every thought that you have. And that is constantly being distracted, but it's also become a habit for people that has, I think it's at least arguable, that has decreased critical thinking or to research for yourself, which is another important life skill, or problem solve in some capacity. All of these things that are also being affected with AI if people are becoming over reliant on it. The most common questions I see in these comment sections are, what about music? What about maps? If you are using something like Spotify, you can download your playlist for offline listening. You can also print off maps or print schedules before you leave the house. That's a real possibility. It's a real like workaround. I remember back in the day, like, listen, this isn't that long ago. Like, I was driving in like 2010. I was printing out directions in 2010, 2011. Anyway, you can get phones that support the internet. So you could theoretically still use maps. Or, if you're really into the music, then you can go full Luddite and you can get an iPod, or can you see, I can't even say like go burn CDs or tapes because a lot of cars don't support those things anymore, which is our world is increasingly requiring the smartphone in order to operate as well. So it's not that like these phones are inconvenient, it's all in your head. The world has increasingly come with the assumption, at least in the global north, that you have a smartphone. There's another element to this. As I was mentioning that some of the other options like the brick or changing the layout or launcher of your phone requires willpower, but so does the dumb phone. Because what is happening is people are now owning two phones, where the dumb phone becomes their main phone and then they may switch out with their smartphone. So now you also need willpower to not put your SIM card back into your smartphone, or you can still use Wi-Fi if you're in places like your home. You could still just check it. And what I'm trying to say is that there's something about the flip phone that appeals to people specifically. Many people romanticize and idealize the flip phone as representative of a simpler or better time. For millennials who lived through the early 2000s, there is nostalgia involved with this phone use and the time. There's some of it that it might feel simpler because we know we were younger and had fewer responsibilities and not necessarily the technology. But one of the things that corresponds to this romanticization or idealization is that our lives didn't revolve around our phones to the degree that they do today. For Gen Z who never experienced this time, that can be more of a romanticization. The flip phone, in some cases, may not be entirely about the phone, but what it represents slowness or a greater separation. Part of the appeal comes from the physicality of the phone. So you have this, you don't get that. I mean, it is pleasurable to snap your phone shut. It's a hard stop. Your phone is closed. It sets up a clear boundary that smartphones don't. I think there's also longing for a time when communication was much more deliberate. A dumb phone requires you to send shorter texts. People are not writing paragraphs with the dumb phone. More calling is happening on these phones because texting is inconvenient and to be much less in demand. When people romanticize this about the early 2000s, what I think sometimes people forget is that you were charged per text. That's why people weren't sending millions of texts or hundreds of thousands of texts or just thousands of texts. You were charged per text. And also, phone calls were quick too because you were charged per minute. Do you remember picking out your phone time? Like, you had 30 anytime minutes or like free calling after 7, things like that. And so you're like, oh, should I call them? Maybe I'll use the landline. We don't got landlines anymore. At least a lot of people don't have landlines anymore either. This is a limitation that I think feels refreshing or desirable in an age where we expect constant replies and we can become annoyed if someone doesn't text us back for half an hour, let alone a day. People are constantly available, people are constantly online, their lives are curated. For people burned out with social media, because that burnout is relevant too, the dumb phone, I think, can represent a return to maybe a level of authenticity, less noise, less pressure, fewer comparisons. At the same time, the nostalgia romanticization glosses over the reality that most people don't want to give up the conveniences of smartphones. All of these creators require their smartphone to post their TikToks. And well, not just to post them, but to film themselves going out in public. If you actually want to make the smartphone thing a reality, you're going to also need a camera to film all of your stuff in and not just your phone. I mean, if you're a TikToker, or if you're somebody who is not a TikToker and you also want to keep memories, even these modern flip phones their camera quality is not good. You're going to need a secondary device to bring out with you when you go to the baby shower or to the park, which may not be too much of an inconvenience for some people, but may just be annoying for others. And dumb phones don't magically solve the root issue of burnout either. People who switch to dumb phones often still keep their smartphones nearby, and the pull to return is always there. But the idea of the dumb phone taps into the longing that a lot of people have right now, the longing to be free from the pressure of online life. The dumb phone, I think, represents some kind of psychological relief because there's a lot of sentiment that life is shit right now. Perhaps, you know, life is the most technologically advanced than it's ever been, but also people may be the unhappiest that they've ever been. Society may be the shittiest they've ever been, depending on where you live or what you constitute as shit. Not all of it is wrong, though, because there is a climate crisis, there is a housing crisis. Cost of living is expensive and continuing to go up would can feel like exponentially. People's salaries are not keeping up with the pace of inflation. The political situation is screwed up all across the world. The dumb phone isn't the answer that people think that it is. I think it's more of like this psychological relief. There's a few things to discuss from a consumption standpoint now. We'll get to more analysis in a minute, but I just kind of feels like the moment to talk about the consumption. First of all, people are running to the store to go buy brand new flip phones for an experiment. You genuinely have no idea if this is going to stick. Resources are required for these phones, and so to go buy these phones brand new, uh I'm so sorry, but like there's other options out there. If you're gonna try out a dumb phone, I urge you to go to Facebook Marketplace or wherever you can get these phones, perhaps the thrift store, depending on where you live. I found options that support 4G where I live under $60. And I also say the thrift store, depending on where you live, because I learned that cell carriers in some places no longer support 2 or 3G. So some of these older phones that were on 2 or 3G are no longer able to be used. The Barbie phone was a hot item last year, and this creator made a TikTok saying, "You're serious about phone detoxing this summer," and they bought a brand new phone to detox for this summer. I'll show you more clips as I speak of people running to the store or going to the store to buy their brand new flip phones. These phones are more expensive than I thought. Nokia models start at about $200, which is a lot of money to drop on a 1 or 2 week experiment. Remember the beginning of the video, the guy who had the phone, the punked phone that was sent to him by the company, that starts at 300 too. But the company also makes what they call a smartphone for intentional use. What the hell is that? If it's still a smartphone, the way it's made intentional is largely you. Maybe I'm being unfair, but it's $600. I mean, all I'm saying is that that's a bit wild given that you could just use what you already have first before buying intentional smartphones. I don't know, this really just sounds like a rich people thing. I will like one of the things that I will give the specific company is that one of their cells is more digital privacy, but I don't know how possible that is on just their operating system. The light phone is also a popular option. I'll show you somebody using it. These phones start at 300 USD. Their current model is the Light Phone 2, but their newer model, the Light Phone 3, is currently on pre-order and starts at $700. This is not a intentional smartphone. This is supposed to be the dumb phone for $700. They also have a trade-in program where you can trade in your Light Phone 2 for your Light Phone 3. Does this sound familiar? Upgrade your phone. They also pitch themselves as your second phone. Here's their description. Light phones are unlocked cell phones. They require an active and compatible nano SIM to function. The phone works standalone without any need for additional smartphone. They have a dashboard for the website. Okay, cool. Light phone can also be used as a complement to your existing smartphone for taking a break and going light, either by swapping your SIM between devices or by getting a second phone number for the light phone. You need an entirely new phone plan for this? You need a new phone number? Like, please. Even if somebody is serious about their dumb phone at the beginning, which a lot of people are, what tends to happen with these things is that people are excited about them, novelty, so fun, so great. Maybe they do have a great experience. But these things don't always last because what happens is a lot of people don't actually want to be disconnected from social media. They just want more intentional use of it and less of it. They want to maybe like be on Instagram or TikTok, but they want to have like a 30-minute screen time or an hour or 2 hour screen time instead of 6 hours screen time. People are buying these brand new phones that are temporary pieces of novelty that don't have lasting impact on their lives. I'm not trying to say that nobody transitions to these phones, period, but they often, if they stick around, become the second phone or the primary phone, but they still have a smartphone plan and they still have access to the smartphone. But even I think more commonly than that, people do their fun experiment or they have their no phone summer and then they just go back to their regular smartphone. Some people's dumb phones confuse me because people are saying they have dumb smartphones. So they have a flip phone, but they have apps with them. So they have like Spotify and YouTube and Instagram. One woman says that her phone supports the Instagram app, but she just didn't download it. How is this really a departure from your smartphone if you still have the Instagram app downloadable on your smartphone? One creator says that her smart dumb phone is a happy mix. It's not quite the dumb phone, not quite the smartphone, because yes, you can download Instagram, but it's so inconvenient to use the phone. You're not really on it. Like the screen is small and you still have T9 texting. I like maybe see the point, but it's still kind of a smartphone. And social media isn't inherently toxic. It is about how you use it. There's good and bad mixed in. And so, what I think people find is that you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing, where there is goodness to social media. You get to find communities and stay connected to people. You can discuss and meet other people that hold and share the same or similar values. I found out about conscious consumerism and no buys and like homesteading and gardening and cooking because of social media. I stay connected to thrifters and people who are using what they have in so many different kinds of capacities and project planning that positively influences me. You get none of that. You miss out on the news and you're less able to organize and to protest, which are very strong benefits of social media. And people doom scrolling, that is a habit that is not beneficial. But having a dumb phone for some people means that they're checking out of the news entirely. And yes, if there are certain moments where being checked in with the news is a challenge, it's fine to check out for a while, but we can't stay checked out. The dumb phone and kind of what's happening with a little bit of this on social media is that it fits into a larger pattern. Consumption as a fix for our problems. For decades, we've been trained, most especially women, to fix your problems with buying more stuff. Stress, book a massage. Unhappy, redecorate your living room. Unfocused, get a new planner. The dumb phone can easily fit into this pattern. I feel addicted to my phone, so I'm just gonna go buy a new phone. In a way, the dumb phone can be, not that it always is, but it can be the band-aid solution. It can be a little bit like having a job that stresses you out, that you work 60 hours a week, but you go take a week-long vacation. The vacation doesn't solve the stress and the problems of the job. You get the temporary sense of relief, but not a sustainable long term solution. The deeper problem, which I think is our relationship to technology and how we use it, doesn't quite change if our solution is to make a new purchase. And it may also reinforce a habit of shopping to get a way out of discomfort. There's also a layer of privilege here of being able to buy a second phone or having a phone that you have on hand when you want periods of detox. This is a phenomenon, I think, of the global north, where many of us already own advanced technology and we have no problem buying even more technology, sometimes on a whim and without thinking about the technology itself and like what happens to it, its lifespan, and like are we actually going to use it? What happens when it's done? We're just going to go and buy more technology or adding another device on top that can function like a coping mechanism. It's a choice made possible by economic privilege, and it highlights how individualized our solutions to systemic problems often become. Instead of addressing these structural issues, like how platforms are designed to addict us, how our work and social lives are increasingly tethered to constant connectivity, we retreat to individual fixes. A dumb phone might feel like resistance, but it's also a highly personal, consumer driven way of handling what is essentially a collective problem. So, these are my closing thoughts. I have a few more things to say. I understand the appeal of the dumb phone. I myself have fantasized about what it would be to use a flip phone, but getting rid of all social media may be like getting rid of the baby with the bathwater, as I had mentioned, because there is bad of social media, but there's also good. Some people do stick with their dumb phones long enough for it to be a realistic and practical solution, but there's also a ton of people out there where it becomes a fun thing for them to try for a few weeks or a summer. If you are genuinely interested in trying a dumb phone, I'm not here to say don't do it. What I would suggest would be to try using what you have first. Try the apps or features that your phone might already have. Perhaps look at other options like the brick. And if none of those things feel quite right or work for you, go ahead and get the dumb phone. But I urge you to go the secondhand route if possible. One of the reasons why people struggle to give up their smartphones is that or switch completely to a dumb phone is that modern life has been increasingly structured around the smartphone. Some menus have been replaced by QR codes. Train schedules and updates to the trains or tracks are only available online. If you're flying, some airlines only provide a digital boarding pass or charge you extra to get a physical boarding pass or check in when you're at the airport. Even simple things like bike sharing, ride hailing, or food ordering are primarily or exclusively done via the internet or apps. Some publications have discontinued their print media altogether. A lot of people have come to value convenience and efficiency so much that it has shifted our perception of normal. There are workarounds to some of these things that I've mentioned, like printing out the train schedule and keeping it in your purse or your backpack, or printing out directions as you navigate where you're going. Inconvenient, but possible. Things that were once ordinary, like writing your grocery list on a piece of paper at home, walking to the train station to catch your times, or calling a cab on the phone, are things that are quite often viewed as too inconvenient to do. Some of them really are, but others are more inconvenient than we've been conditioned to accept. There is a contradiction here as well. People, on one hand, crave simplicity, a slower pace, and boundaries with their technology. People want the freedom of not being tethered to their apps and to their phone. On the other hand, our culture tends to prioritize speed, convenience, access. Inconveniences of a dumb phone can feel freeing at first, but too inconvenient after a while. And it can also feel like you're punishing yourself in a world that doesn't really make room for slowness anymore. But let's say you're at a party or you're at a gathering with friends and everybody's on their phone all the time and you're not. Maybe it feels good to be free, but also maybe it feels like you're missing out. And I think it could be worth asking, are there other ways that you can achieve or get more slowness or more separation in your own life? If it's slowness we crave, there may be other things we could do that help us get in touch with practicing slowness or practicing intentionality. We can't always control what other people do or all of our environments, but if we are craving slowness, maybe the dumb phone isn't like the first way to start. Maybe there are other things that we could do for free, or maybe they cost money, but in our lives that help us be more slow or be more intentional if this is a thing that we're really craving. The dumb phone gets idealized as this pure, almost heroic choice, a way to reclaim time, attention, and presence. Sometimes we want the symbolism of a slower life without fully sacrificing the systems that make it run smoothly. This is why the dumb phone can become more of a cultural statement than a permanent solution. The dumb phone can represent the fantasy of freedom that you can go to as potentially a way of getting a moment of control in a time or a place where you feel like you don't have much control, or a way to take control in your life, the way to access freedom whenever you want. So you have that dumb phone in your pocket or in your desk that you can rely on when you're in search or craving of these feelings. So that's everything for me today. I would be curious to hear about your experiences if you've tried a dumb phone. I would love to hear from people who have tried them. As mentioned, I do think for some people it's going to be the solution. Some people really just don't want to be on social media. They just want the bare bones of being able to be reachable or to reach other people, and they become the permanent solution. Other people, they become a bit of an escapism every now and then. And have you ever been interested in trying it? And also, importantly as well, have you had some of these feelings but gone for different solutions? I would love to hear this as well. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you again around here soon for a new video. Bye.